In this lesson, we're going to be looking at graphing linear equations using a table. Now, if I don't provide you with a table at the very beginning, it's going to be your job to create a table from scratch. A good starting point is always -1, 0, and 1 for your x values. Remember, we're going to eventually graph these, so you want to include positive values, a neutral value, which is 0, and negative values. So that's why we start with 1, 0, and -1. In the first equation, right, before I set up my table, if you want, you could set it up like this, an input-output table. Look at your first equation, plug in -1 for x, 0, and then +1. So if -1 is my x, I have I have 4 times -1, which is -4, just to show the work. 4 times -1, and then +1. So 4 times -1 gives me -4, plus 1, which is -3. Okay, so whenever I plug in -1, I get -3. 0 is an easy one. 4 times 0 plus 1. So 4 times 0 is 0, plus 1, which is +1. So whenever I plug in 0 for x, my y becomes 1. I'm going to move on to +1. 4 times 1 plus 1. So 4 times 1 is 4, plus 1, which is 5. So whenever I plug in 1 for x, I get 5 for my y. I have an x, I have a y. These are ordered pairs. I can now graph them. Now, I would recommend you put these on graph paper, but I'm just going to make a quick makeshift graph here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. -1, -3 is going to be here. 0, +1 is going to be here, and then 1, +5 is going to be here. These are 3 points. I'm going to connect them as best as I can. I highly recommend using a ruler. You want to extend your lines, and then you want to include the arrows, which signifies that this line goes on infinitely. I'm going to do the same for the next problem. Set up my xy table. Alright, start with -1, 0, and +1. For my x values, plug them in and solve. If x is -1, -1 minus 2, this becomes -3. So whenever x is -1, y is -3. When x is 0, 0 minus 2 is -2. When x is 0, y is -2. Finally, I'm going to plug in 1 for x. 1 minus 2, which is -1. Okay, so whenever x is 1, y is -1. Again, I have an x, I have a y, I have 3 ordered pairs. I'm going to make this this quick graph. So again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. -1, -3 is right here. 0, -2 is right here, and then 1, -1 is right about there. Use a ruler if you want to keep it straight. Extend your lines and include arrows. Again, that signifies that it goes on infinitely. And there's my graph. Now, if you notice about these first examples, I'm just dealing with whole numbers here. Y is isolated, y is by itself, but my values are all whole numbers. So x is going to be multiplied by a whole number here. X is just a whole number and then subtracted by 2. These are nice and easy to work with. Once I start getting into fractions like these two examples, it gets a little bit different. -1, 0, and 1 do work, but it will set you up with decimals and fractions. I want to avoid that completely. So instead of using -1, 0, and 1, you want to use, or you want to select the denominator for your x value. You can still stick with 0, and then choose the opposite of the denominator. So the denominator here is 2. I'm going to use -2. So let's set up my xy table. So again, I want to use my denominator. I'm going to use 2. I'm going to use 0. And then the opposite of my denominator, which is -2. I like to write these in order from least to greatest, but if you want to write them in order from greatest to least, that's fine. It's not going to change up your answer. Alright, so now let's use the math. If x is 2 here, I have 1/2 of 2 plus 2. So if you need to use a calculator, you can. Or you could just say this out loud. Let me see if I can move this up really quick. what's 1/2 of 2? So 1/2 of 2 is 1, so 1 plus 2 gives me 3. So when x is 2, y is 3. Move this up a little bit. Okay. When x is 0, so 1/2 times 0 plus 2. What's half of 0? Well, anything times 0 is just going to give me 0. 0 plus 2 will give me 2. Finally, I'm going to plug in 1/2 times -2, which is my x, and then plus 2. So what's half of -2? -1 plus 2, which will give me 1. So when x is 2, if I plug it into this equation, y is 3. When x is 0, y is 2. When x is -2, y is 1. Again, you want to set up your graph. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so I have 2, 3, which is going to be right about here. I have 0, 2, which is right about there. And then -2, +1, which is right about there. Again, use a ruler to connect these. Extend your lines and include arrows. All right. If you notice that your line's not diagonal, then you should go back and double check your work, because chances are your table may be wrong. So again, in this problem, I'm going to set up my xy table. I'm dealing with a fraction, so my three values for x should not be -1, 0, and 1. They should be the denominator 0 and the opposite of the denominator. So the denominator is 4. I'm going to use 0, and the opposite of 4, which is -4. Okay? So again, I'm going to plug these into the equation. When x is 4, 1/4 times 4. Look what happens here. You could use a calculator for these, or you could do the math on paper or in your head. I'm going to put a 1 down here. 4 times 4 is going to give me 4 over 4. Or if you just cross simplify these, you will get 1, no matter which way you do this. All right, so when you plug in 4, you get 1. 1/4 times 0. When x is now 0, anything times 0 will give you 0. This is nice and easy. So 0 becomes 0. And now 1/4 times -4. Again, if you want to put a 1 underneath it, you can get -4 over 4, or if you do cross simplification, you simply get -1. All right, so when x is 4, y is 1. When x is 0, y is 0. When x is -4, y is -1. Again, set up your graph. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. 4, 1 is going to be right about here. Actually, I skewed the graph a little bit, so it should be about right about there. 0, 0, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, -4, -1. So if you don't put this on graph paper, it may not be the most accurate graph, but it's going to be close. Use a ruler to connect all 3 points. Extend your lines and draw your arrows, and there's your graph.